Hello, everyone. Tonight we are neck deep in the thickest, stickiest, most unreasonable swamp you could imagine. The air hums like it's full of whispers, the mud is warmer than it should be, and something just moved under the water, but it didn't swim. It slid, quietly, silently, as if the swamp had a soul and it was gliding right beneath your feet. Welcome to the realm of the dinosaur that never walked. No stomping footprints, no thunderous legs. Just slick, slow motion through a kingdom of rotting moss and sunken roots. You probably won't survive, not because it'll eat you, this one's more of a stealth hunter. It'll just wrap around your imagination and pull you under. You won't even notice. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. Post your location and your local time. I like knowing where in the timeline you're tuning in from. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. You shuffle along the peat-blistered edge of what once was a wetland so vast it had no horizon. The trees here don't reach up, they curl like tired fingers hunched over pools of green-black water. Everything stinks of decay and distant thunderstorms. This is where the sliders lived. No official name, not yet. Some paleontologists call it Sabalonectes latens, hidden sand swimmer, but that's just to fill the paperwork. What matters is the body long, low, flat. Its rib cage flared outward like a serving tray splayed to distribute weight over mud that would happily eat anything vertical. The legs vestigial, comically small. If you ever saw it try to stand, you'd think it was being punished by evolution, but it never stood. It didn't need to. The entire swamp worked like a slipstream highway for it. You'd see a cluster of reeds shiver, a patch of water form strange concentric ripples, then gone. Like someone had pulled a blanket of algae over the scene. Beneath that veneer was a network of tunnels, not carved but worn over generations. The way kids in a house learn where the floorboards creak. This dinosaur learned where the swamp gave. Every inch of its motion was a compromise with fluid resistance. It didn't fight the water, it made deals with it. Belly down, chest up, eyes, just beneath the film of light. It glided like a discarded robe caught on a current. And because it never walked, it left behind no tracks, only displaced stillness. Here's something funny. The only reason we even found one was by accident. In the 1970s, an oil team drilling in the Yucatan hit something soft, not gas, not rock. Just silence. A preserved skeleton, flattened like a pressed flower, was lying belly down under 18 meters of sulfur-rich sludge. The geologist reportedly said, "It looks like a dinosaur tried to hide under a pancake." And he wasn't wrong. It was perfect, nearly intact. Which is rare. Most swamp fossils dissolve before anyone knows they were there. But this one was sealed inside a kind of natural resin bubble, probably from a tree that bled itself dry, trying to stay upright in shifting muck. Lucky us. Now here's your off-topic treat of the night. There's a species of eel in modern Indonesian swamps that can tie itself into a knot to push food through its own body. Makes you think, doesn't it? Nature doesn't care how weird you think locomotion should be. Historians still debate whether the creature's behavior was more akin to snake otters or even burrowing lungfish. Some argue it was the dinosaur equivalent of a limbless mole, using muscle waves to worm forward. Others think it could inflate parts of its abdomen with methane to create lift like a primitive hovercraft. I mean, imagine your digestive system doubling as transportation. Sliding was the least of its talents, though. This dinosaur disappeared. In the same way ice melts into water, it could ease from visibility into legend. Entire populations might have glided beneath the jungle floor for centuries without ever revealing a spine. Predators couldn't follow. Prey didn't see them coming. You get the idea. This wasn't a dinosaur trying to win races. It was a ghost in the mulch. You kneel down near one of the tunnel mouths, collapsed now full of pale fungi and mosquitoes that never blink. A breeze sighs through the reeds. It smells like something long submerged, and if you listen hard, you might hear the last sound it ever made, not a roar, not a screech, just a subtle shift in sediment. A sound so soft it could lull you to sleep or pull you under. That's the thing with swamps, they don't remember your name. They don't need to, but they remember movement, and tonight, you've stirred something. You are born into a world that swallows light. There's no sunshine where your egg cracks open, just the squelch of warm, trembling earth, the reek of methane, and the trembling rustle of roots above. You don't stand, you slide. Not because you're injured or lazy, but because that's all you know how to do. Legs dangle, yes, but they're more decorative than functional, like a toddler trying to wear glasses. Your first breath tastes like filtered death. Sweet rot wet clay and something faintly metallic. Around you, dozens of others wiggle out of soft-bottomed nests. They're shaped like you, flat, flexible, and coated in a kind of mucus that makes moving through sludge feel like swimming in melted butter. No one chirps, no one stretches toward a sun they'll never see. They simply glide. The nest chamber is less of a bowl and more of a funnel angled to let the hatchlings slide into the swamp's porous veins. Gravity does most of the work. You tumble gently into a runnel of damp soil, guided by instinct more ancient than thought. The tunnels are narrow-roofed with root tangles and lined with pulpy moss. Every movement is a whisper in the dark. Your parents are not here. Probably never were. This species doesn't babysit. It trusts the mud to raise its young. And it does. It teaches by resistance. If you push wrong, you stick. If you push right, you glide. It's as simple and brutal as that. Now and then, something pulses through the tunnel system, warmth or vibrations, or the muffled boom of a distant predator trying to crash through the surface. But down here, the world is quiet. Safe. You are invisible, at least for now. Above you, the swamp is a ceiling of chaos. Ferns collapse. Insects scream. The occasional feathered raptor stomps past, smelling nothing. Hearing nothing. The idea of a young dinosaur hiding underground used to sound ridiculous until scientists discovered a fossilized hatchling with all four limbs folded under its belly and what looked like calloused scales along the ribs. Calluses. From friction, from sliding. Historians still debate whether these calluses formed from daily motion or were a developmental feature baked in before birth. Some argue that the nesting process itself involved compression in egg, laid under heavy mud, forcing the embryo to adapt to its environment before it ever hatched. Others think it's more behavioral survival of the slipperiest. Odd fact of the night, there's a species of blind cavefish that navigates using electrical pulses from its skin, sort of like a living sonar. Your dinosaur might have done the same, but with pressure changes reading tiny shifts in water tension through organs along its sides. You didn't need eyes, you had feelers built into your bones. As you grow, the tunnels widen, but only slightly. You don't get tall, you get long. Your tail thickens not for balance because, let's be honest, there's no balancing going on, but for steering. When danger comes, and it will, your only defense is speed and silence. Or rather, speed without sound, like a dropped scarf skating across an oiled floor. Your siblings. Most of them will vanish. Some will get lost in clogged tunnels. Some will mistake a predatory burrow for an escape route. One poor fool will probably wedge himself under a root knot and dehydrate in place. Swamps don't forgive navigational errors. But you begin to memorize the routes, the pressure patterns, the chemical whispers in the water. You learn which patches of tunnel led to feeding pools, which ones are used too often, and carry the stink of other sliders and which ones are wide enough to nap in. Though calling it napping is generous when your sleep looks more like floating in a still exhale. On your 20th day, something new happens. You hear music, not the fluty calls of birds, but the low rhythmic thudding of rain, striking swamp water. A storm. It sends vibrations through the mud, opening temporary wormholes of liquefied soil. You follow these. You slide fast now. The rain feeds your world not by cleaning it, but by loosening it. Tunnels become highways. This is when you make your first breach. You rise from the tunnel, just your snout breaking the surface like a shy candle flame. Around you, nothing moves. Everything waits. And for the first time, you see light, not sky, but its reflection on water. Ripples spin from your nostrils. A frog hops in the distance. A dragonfly the size of your tail dips once, twice, then vanishes. You duck back down. Enough of that nonsense. Here's the historical kicker. Fossilized juvenile tunnels were discovered in a layered formation in the Amazon basin, concentric, overlapping, and almost fractal in structure. Paleontologists at first thought they were ancient root systems, but then they found molted skin layers. Scutes. That's not plant work. That's a creature learning to slide home. You think of your tunnel as home. But it's more than that. It's identity. Above ground is noise and death. Below is silence and memory. You never walk, but you move. With precision. With dignity. You don't need footprints to leave a mark. You just need to pass through once quietly. You are older now, maybe 2 moons past your hatching, though you've never seen the moon. Not really. Only that rare shimmer it casts through gaps in the algae overhead when you dare to breach. But what matters isn't the light above, it's the tunnels beneath. You've learned them. You've bent them to your shape. You move with the confidence of something built for shadows. The tunnel walls part just enough to let your ribs brush past in steady rhythm. Your tail, thicker now, heavy with layered muscle, sways gently to maintain direction. You've developed a subtle skill by shifting your weight in rolling pulses. You can rise slightly in the tunnel, riding a bubble of pressure like a slow elevator in muck. It's not glamorous, it's genius. The juveniles that survive this long become masters of glide. But there's an art to staying unseen. At this stage, the danger isn't just getting stuck, it's being smelled. The swamp's air is heavy and slow, but a careless vent hole can act like a whistle. So you learn to plug them with your snout or curl up and backtrack through a detour. In your world, turning around is a full-body commitment. Remember that flat skeleton found in the Yucatan? The one preserved like a pressed flower? Turns out the juvenile bones were even stranger. Long, ossified cartilage sheets instead of proper ribs, almost like a sled runner. That's not walking anatomy. That's designed for frictionless progress. Historians still debate whether this was a species-wide trait or something juveniles eventually grew out of, but so far, no adult fossil shows it disappearing. Nature didn't expect you to graduate to legs. Here's your odd fact for tonight. Baby armadillos in some regions can hold their breath for over 5 minutes. Why? Because their burrows sometimes flood and they just wait it out. Your swamp-dwelling dinosaur cousin likely pulled the same stunt. Evidence in cranial cavities shows enlarged sinuses, possibly not for sniffing, but for storing air. You're not alone down here. Occasionally you sense another. You feel them first, a subtle pull on the silt, a rhythm like your own, but slightly off. Sometimes it's a clutchmate. Sometimes it's not. When you cross paths, you don't fight. You merge. Just 2 slick shadows exchanging nothing but silent ripples before diverging again. There are predators, of course, always are. Above ground, things with feathers and teeth skulk along the canopy's edge, peering down for a glint of motion. But those fools rely on sight. Down here, you are functionally invisible. The real threats are burrowers, lungfish-like horrors that come in sideways, carving sudden trenches into your sanctuary. You've lost cousins to them. One moment they're there, the next a choked gurgle, a collapsed silence. So you learn to pause, listen. Every few minutes you press your body to the floor and wait. The mud speaks, if you're patient. One morning, it could be a Tuesday for all. You know the tunnel changes. A recent flood has caused a collapse ahead. You don't panic. You've seen this before. A slight backup in pressure. The way your own weight shifts unexpectedly beneath you, so you reverse. No turning, just gliding backward. Every rib helps. Every scale knows what to do. You detour through a narrower passage where fibrous roots tangle like sleeping centipedes. You make no sound, and suddenly a new chamber opens larger than anything you've yet seen. You've entered what older sliders call the sleeping mouths, wide reservoirs in the tunnel system where bodies gather to rest, molt, or sometimes just wait out the noise above. There are 7 others in the chamber. You count by heat. Your body can detect shifts in temperature through your belly scales like a prehistoric infrared. Some are asleep, one is dead. The dead aren't mourned, they're absorbed. Within days, the body will sink fully into the swamp, every nutrient repurposed. Nothing wastes here. Death is just redistribution. Historians still debate whether these sleeping mouths were intentional, constructed, and passed down, or just natural formations that generations reused. No evidence of tool use has been found, but some walls show claw scratch patterns that seem deliberate, almost like symbols. Maybe instinct, maybe communication, maybe the world's first graffiti. In the sleeping mouth, you find your rhythm. You rest. You breathe shallowly. The air is moist but stale, like the inside of a drum left underwater. No one speaks. Even if they could, what would they say down here? Survival is speech. Movement is identity. And then you slide again, because staying still too long invites rot. Movement isn't just survival, it's hygiene. You stir the tunnel, oxygenate the roots. Create wake for things smaller than yourself to chase. In a way, you're gardening, cultivating a living maze. Modern researchers found one of these large chambers in a Malaysian peat swamp. Not a fossil, a hollow. Perfectly round, too smooth to be natural, and filled with a gelatinous sludge unlike anything in surrounding layers. They found trace collagen dinosaur tissue. Possibly. But the report ended with a note sample self-dissolved after 2 hours of exposure, like it didn't want to be known. Back in your tunnel, you pause at a vent near the surface. A shaft of light filters down through ferns and fog. You consider rising. But then, a shadow passes overhead. A massive winged predator. You stay still. It doesn't see you. And just like that, you're reminded the surface is not for you. Let them walk. You'll slide. You are a skeleton in progress, and it shows. Not the usual dinosaur frame, a tower of femurs and hips, but something sleeker, stranger. If evolution were a game of sculpting clay, your body was made by someone who slapped the lump flat, then dragged it through a puddle with 2 fingers. Not a creature of posture, a creature of passage. Let's take a closer look at what holds you together. Start with the ribs. In other species, they protect organs and provide structure for breath. In you, they glide. Your rib cage doesn't round, it flares out like a shallow dish. Thin, wide, almost paper-like toward the ends. This isn't armor, it's a raft, a natural sled. You are built not to sink, but to spread your weight pushed laterally, allowing you to stay atop muck that would swallow anything vertical in seconds. Walking was not just unnecessary, it would have been fatal. Your spine is less of a column and more of a ribbon, flexible but strong. You can twist, coil, even flatten in 2 directions depending on the tunnel's curve. Cartilage discs between the vertebrae are thicker than normal, probably to absorb the vibrations of rough terrain. It's like you have shock absorbers inside your back. Not for jumping, for gliding silently over half-solid terrain. Historians still debate whether this body plan evolved from earlier burrowers, or if it emerged as a unique experiment in extreme wetland living. Some believe your ancestors walked, albeit awkwardly, and were slowly flattened by pressure and adaptation. Others suspect a rapid shift, a break from tradition so complete it was almost comedic. What if evolution whispered, we just skipped legs? And what of the legs? Let's not pretend. They're there sure but barely. Front limbs that dangle limply, barely long enough to scratch your own chin. Hind limbs curled back like afterthoughts ending in soft claws that probably served more for paddling during early life stages than for gripping anything. At adulthood, they might retract entirely. Modern analogs include certain caecilian amphibians, worm-like creatures that bury their limbs inside of their flesh. Nature's way of saying don't bother. Here's a weird modern fact for you. The bones of certain cave salamanders grow slower in total darkness, preserving flexibility for longer. It's called pedomorphosis, retaining juvenile traits into adulthood. Your skeleton screams the same thing. You never grow out of your young body. You grow deeper into it. The skull is perhaps the strangest part. Low, triangular, with nostrils not at the front, but on the top, like a periscope. When your body is buried beneath silt and algae, your only connection to the surface might be those two tiny breathing holes, breaking the tension of the water. Your jaw doesn't open wide, it hinges sideways, scissor-like, designed to slice rather than crush. Whatever you ate, it didn't fight back long. And those teeth, micro-serrated, curved slightly backward, set in rows that suggest a conveyor belt function. Not for chewing, there's no time for that, but for anchoring, pulling, and letting your esophagus handle the details. In one fossil, scientists found a tiny cluster of pebbles embedded in the gut area, gastroliths, maybe used to grind food. But that only raised more questions. Why would a creature that slides and swallows whole things need stones to digest them? Historians still debate the purpose of those pebbles. Some think it's for ballast to control buoyancy in particularly flooded tunnels. Others suspect they were ingested accidentally, scooped up with prey. A few suggest they were used in mating displays, rattling around to create sound, but no one agrees. Swamp science is always a bit murky. Back to the bones. You possess a series of reinforced plates beneath your skin, not quite armor, more like underfloor padding. These plates overlap slightly like fish scales made of bone. This system likely served two purposes: structural support and damage control. If a root jabbed you or a tunnel collapsed slightly, you wouldn't tear. You'd bend, disperse the blow, and keep going. Here's the fun bit. Researchers have noted a striking similarity between your skeletal layout and that of a sled dog's harness, except instead of distributing, pull your bones, distribute drag. You're a one-creature toboggan. The fossil record gives us only shadows, but the shapes suggest a creature engineered not for open plains or dramatic chases, but for a kind of quiet endurance. No flair, no horns, no roars, just a soft, slithering survival. And that might have been your greatest weapon. Dinosaurs that roared got noticed. You didn't. You just passed through. In fact, many of your bones likely never fossilized at all. They were too soft, too porous, which is why, until recently, no one even thought this kind of dinosaur existed. Most paleontologists are looking for footprints, trackways, nests. You left none of those, just tunnels. Subtle shifts in soil density. Impressions mistaken for erosion. But now that we know where to look, the picture's coming together. You were not a walker, not a runner, not even a crawler, really. You were a slider. And your skeleton tells the whole smooth, flattened tale. You slide into a chamber so vast it feels like a breath. Not yours, the swamp's. The ceiling rises out of reach, a net of pale roots and fungal tendrils that look like upside-down frost. The walls curve unnaturally, as if molded by something round, slow, and deliberate. This isn't erosion, it's architecture. And this time you're not alone. Beneath the ferns above, hidden from predators, lies a city made of tunnels. You drift forward. Your belly presses against hardened slime layers that feel almost smooth now, like the polished interior of a conch shell. This section is old generations have passed through here, maybe hundreds. The tunnel walls shine faintly in places where bioluminescent algae have taken hold. You don't understand light, not really, but the shimmer soothes your instincts. You're safe for now. Over. Around you, the system unfolds in spirals. Not random loops, but concentric designs like fingerprints pressed into earth. Some tunnels dive deeper, others widen into shallow basins. A few are sealed off entirely, plugged with what appears to be woven plant fiber and hardened silt. You didn't know your kind did that. No one teaches you. But it feels familiar, like the memory of a lullaby. Historians still debate whether these tunnel cities were natural formations modified by behavior or entirely excavated by generations of sliders. Evidence exists on both sides. Some chambers show claw marks and scraping patterns too consistent to be chance. Others bear signs of collapse and regrowth that suggest opportunism, not planning. Either way, the result is the same: a sprawling, hidden metropolis beneath the swamp, immune to fire predator, and even time itself. You pause at a junction. The air smells different here, drier, tinged with dust. That's rare. Maybe a collapsed ceiling vent. You reach up with your snout, feel the cool breath of surface wind. You could surface if you wanted to. You don't! Back underground movement stirs. Another slider glides past, larger than you. You brush flanks. Neither of you startles. That's how it works down here: mutual invisibility. Recognition is measured in pauses, not eye contact. There's no dominance, no territory. Only flow. If the city teaches one thing, it's that silence is communication. Here's your odd fact of the night. In parts of New Guinea, local tribes discovered ancient underground drainage systems built before any surviving structures. No one knows who made them. Some claim they're natural. Others think they were for water farming. But here's the weird bit: they're patterned like a labyrinth. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe something about tunnels just wants to become a map. You explore deeper. The chamber opens into what looks like a nursery, though no living juveniles crawl here now. Instead, you find molted skin. Sheets of semi-translucent scute layers left behind like discarded raincoats. Dozens of them. Some small, some nearly your size. This place was once teeming, but now it's hushed. Something happened. Drought, predation, disease. Even the algae seem hesitant to reclaim it. A soft vibration hums through the floor. Not danger, just another slider several tunnels over. You press your underside to the earth and listen. It's a gesture older than language. You feel the pulse of their movement, slow and even. No urgency. Not a hunt, not a chase. Just another body passing through this underground hive of living architecture. You move on. The next chamber is stranger still. It's circular, perfectly so. And in the center sits a mound. Not of rock, but of stacked bones. Mostly small ones, fish, frogs, maybe even birds. No flesh remains. Just the hushed echo of consumption. You circle the mound once, twice. On the third pass, you press your chin gently against it. No reason, no instinct, just reverence. Historians still debate the purpose of these bone mounds. Some claim they're incidental places where food remnants accumulated over decades. Others argue for something more ritualistic. A grave, a warning, a shrine. There's no consensus, just theories wrapped in mud. Here's something funny. Certain bird species today will collect shiny objects and place them in specific patterns, not to attract mates, but because they like the way it looks. Aesthetics without explanation. Maybe your ancestors shared that impulse. Maybe this city had its artists too. You continue winding through corridors so tight you must angle your ribs sideways to pass. Some tunnels have collapsed. You detour. Others loop back unexpectedly, forming circles like ghost tracks. You find a section flooded with gas bubbles trapped beneath algae film. When they pop, they release a smell like sulfur and wet leaves. You slide carefully. This is your world? No sky, no color, no voice, just the soft hush of movement and the touch of walls that remember your ancestors. The city changes slowly, eroding and rebuilding with the rhythm of the swamp. Some tunnels fade. Others are born. But the pattern holds, spiral upon spiral, memory layered in mud. You never see the whole map, no one does, but you know your route, and that's enough. You've long since stopped wondering about eyes. Yours are there, yes, but buried beneath layers of translucent scale, shaded against the sun you never see. You blink rarely, if ever. And when you do, it's like closing a window that was already covered in curtains. Vision is secondary, maybe even tertiary. You live by pressure, by vibration, by whispers in the mud. You were never meant to see above water. Your nostrils sit high and back on your skull, more snorkel than snout. They open when you're just below the film of the swamp, like two tiny blowholes peeking through duckweed. But your eyes, they almost never break the surface. If you breach at all, it's for air, not curiosity. The world up there is too bright, too loud, too dangerously visible. It's a place for things with feathers and speed, not for you. Down here, light is a rumor. You rely on something better, sensation. Your entire body is a listening device. Along your flanks, tiny sensory pits detect the faintest tremor. The tail of a fish wriggling 3 chambers away. The shift of a root after rainfall. The distant slide of another slider too far to see, too close to ignore. These signals pass through your ribs, your spine, your belly scales. You don't hear them. You become them. Historians still debate whether your species relied more on chemical cues or physical vibrations to navigate. Some suspect a hybrid system with special glands in the jawbone that could taste motion, almost like how some snakes flick their tongues to smell. Others argue for electroreception, sensing electrical fields from prey. But the truth may be more peculiar. Perhaps you didn't sense prey at all. Perhaps you sensed emptiness, pockets of stillness in the mud, and moved toward them. Here's a strange modern comparison. The star-nosed mole has 22 fleshy appendages around its snout that can detect shapes faster than human sight. It lives underground in darkness and yet can see with its nose. You ancient swamp slider may have had your own version of this, a multi-sensory face tuned not to vision, but to disturbance. That might explain your head shape. Low and wide like a door wedge. Flattened from above with forward-facing grooves lined in dense nerve clusters. These weren't nostrils. They weren't eyes. They were instruments. You didn't look at your world. You read it like braille pressed into the tunnel walls. Each bump and scrape told a story. Each shift in the water's pull wrote a sentence across your spine. Above you, birds scream. You don't know what they look like, but you feel their sound when it strikes the water. It's like someone dropped a brick in a pond 2 rooms over. Disruptive, unsubtle, dangerous. You respond the only way you know how. You glide deeper. The tunnel narrows. Here the mud is denser, richer in mineral veins. Your body curves slightly as you adjust. The resistance increases. This isn't your usual route, but you feel something familiar, the scent of mold, the pressure gradient of an old feeding pit. So you push forward, ribs creaking softly with the strain. And then you find it, a sensory chamber. Natural or made, it's impossible to say. The space is round, sloped inward, and eerily silent. No movement, no airflow, just potential. You settle. In the center, your body forming a loose coil. Here you wait. And while you wait, you listen, not with ears, but with your entire body. A frog enters from the far end. You don't see it, but you feel it. The pressure of its steps, the tiny displacements in the film of algae atop a shallow puddle. The sudden stillness as it pauses, sensing something ancient in the dark. You strike. not with a roar or a charge, but with a shift. Your body moves like a wave breaking forward, your jaws opening sideways, catching the frog in a suction vortex created by your own glide. No mess, no splash, just a gulp, a ripple, and stillness again. That's how you hunt. Not with chase, with timing. Your prey is swallowed by surprise. Historians still debate how efficient your sensory system was. Some say it rivaled sonar adapted for short-range accuracy in murky water. Others claim it functioned more like touch slower but richer. The debate continues, fed by the strange asymmetry in your fossilized skulls. One side always seems slightly more developed. Some think it was directional, allowing you to focus like a living compass. You don't think about it. You're just hungry. Odd fact of the night, the blind cave tetrafish is completely eyeless but still schools in synchronized patterns. It feels the water pressure changes caused by its neighbors and follows flawlessly. You may have lived like that too, an entire population sliding silently, each feeling the other's wake, a collective choreography with no lead dancer. Back in your tunnel, you sense movement, a change in the current, a scent. It's rain, distant but coming. The roots above you begin to tremble with incoming droplets. The swamp is awakening. You retreat not from fear but from instinct. Heavy rains mean unstable tunnels. Caves collapse. Vents flood. And worst of all, predators move closer to the surface for easy prey. You know how to wait them out. You've done it before. You lower yourself into a storage bend, a crook in the tunnel lined with spongy moss. You breathe slowly, evenly, your eyes such as they are close. And the world darkens not just around you, but through you. Vision. That's for surface dwellers. You see with your skin. You are hungry. Not of the aching, gnawing hunger of a warm-blooded beast, but the calm, hollow ache of something designed to wait for food to come to it. No chasing, no hunting, no leaping from shadows, just lying still and luring. The tunnel around you is quiet, the kind of quiet that hums with potential. You press your body low belly against the damp floor tail resting just beneath a mat of roots. You flick it once, slowly. Just enough to stir the silt. A cloud lifts, soft, lazy. Just enough to tickle the water's surface with motion. Then you wait. That's how dinner works down here. Prey doesn't fear you. It doesn't even know you're there. Insects skitter along the algae film overhead, making high-pitched ripples that tremble all the way down the tunnel. Amphibians, fat, pulsing, wet things float lazily, watching nothing. And then one of them sees it, a bit of mud in motion. A twitch of roots, a flicker of something like a worm. It swims closer. You exhale, just enough to send a second puff of mud upward. The frog dips its legs beneath the surface. You lunge, not fast, fluid, like the swamp itself has decided to take something back. Your jaw slides open sideways, your neck arches forward, and a suction wave rolls through your skull, drawing water and frog directly into your throat. Dinner. Historians still debate the feeding method of your species. Some claim the wide-scooped skull was used to shovel prey up from the bottom like a bowl. Others suggest it functioned more like a trapdoor triggering shut when a pressure threshold was crossed. But the theory gaining traction now is suction. Evidence lies in the bony rings found around the gullet of one fossil, a structure capable of rapid expansion and contraction, like the throat of a seahorse or a vacuum eel. And if that's true, then your entire hunting method depended on the silence of the swamp. You weren't just still, you were invisible until you weren't. Here's your odd fact for tonight. There's a type of worm that lives in ocean mud and eats by creating a false water current with its mouth to draw in particles. The twist. Its own movement is the bait. It fakes being prey. Your tail-flicking trick might have been similar. The mud was never camouflage. It was advertising. Once full, you don't rest. Digestion is not something you do lying around. You glide to do it. The movement keeps blood flowing, encourages internal motion. So you slide in loops, pressing your sides against the tunnel walls, like a serpent massaging its own stomach. Left, right, dip, rise. The motion helps break down food and push out waste. You are your own digestive system. Some tunnels are worn smooth from this, like they were built not just for travel but for comfort. The sediment conforms to your body. You suspect others used this route before you, maybe even generations before. It's almost intimate, like slipping into clothes that still remember their previous owner's shape. You reach a junction where the tunnel splits, one side leading upward, another down. You sniff. The upper tunnel smells too active. Predator. Scent maybe. You dip instead. Deeper. Cooler. Quieter. Here the tunnel opens into a flooded corridor filled with gelatinous plants. These aren't prey, they're markers. You remember them. Your kind uses them to orient. It's less like signage and more like a scented trail. You brush past gently, releasing spores. The next slider will know you were here. Maybe they'll follow, maybe they won't. Historians still debate whether these trail markers were intentional or just incidental. Did you cultivate them? Carry the spores from chamber to chamber. One theory claims your mucus activated growth in specific species, like a gardener encouraging moss. Another suggests the plants followed you, not the other way around, seeking the warmth and moisture of your passage. It's a muddy discussion. You slow. You feel the pressure change in your gut, digestion complete. You pause in a shallow basin filled with fine sediment, then release waste in one slow ripple. The water stirs, then settles. Within minutes, tiny scavengers, larvae, snails, microcrustaceans flock to the cloud. Nothing is wasted. You wonder, though, not with thoughts exactly if that's what happens to you when you die. Just another ripple, another nutrient cloud, another reason for something else to pass through. Not tragic, not glorious, just necessary. Here's another fun modern comparison. Sloths have a ritualized poop schedule. Once a week, they descend from the trees, dig a hole, and do their business despite the danger. Some researchers believe it's for communication. Others think the poop feeds a special moss that grows on their fur, a whole micro-ecosystem built on waste. Maybe your swamp did the same. You slide on, not bothered by the idea. Your world is mud and life and death and life again. You don't need fire or song or starlight. You have tunnels. You have silence. You have a tail that stirs the silt just enough to say, I was here. And for now, that's enough. The swamp shifts. Not just the water, not just the mud, but everything. The trees don't stand still. They float. Sort of. Root mats as thick as rooftops drift across the fen like barges with bad intentions. Entire islands of moss reeds and tangled shrubs slide silently over the water, pushed by nothing visible. It's like the ground is trying to rearrange itself, and you, a creature made to slide right with it. You don't fight it. You become it. You move in sync with these drifting platforms, not under them exactly, but through the spaces they carve. It's a strange kind of coevolution. Wherever the swamp shifts, your tunnels stretch to meet it. The marsh breathes, and you adjust your ribs to match the rhythm. You live inside a slow-motion avalanche. Historians still debate whether your species adapted to floating vegetation or if the vegetation changed to accommodate you. Some propose a kind of symbiosis. As you glided through the soil, your movement stirred nutrients upward into the root systems of floating mats, feeding them from below. Others argue it was purely passive. You didn't feed the swamp. You just didn't disturb it enough to matter. The current thinking, though, suggests something more elegant. As the root islands drifted, they altered pressure gradients in the sediment. Your tunnels responded. Over time, this dance of cause and effect created living corridors, always slightly different, never the same path twice. You weren't a navigator. You were a reader of subtle shifts. Here's a wild modern fact: mangrove islands in certain river deltas really do float. And as they drift, fish and invertebrates follow beneath them, like loyal fans relying on the shade and nutrient drips. One study even found that the roots of these islands attract and guide fish like sonar buoys. Your ancestors may have done the same, sliding beneath a mobile canopy like pilgrims under a shifting sky. You glide beneath one now. The roots above you dangle like ancient eyelashes. Water seeps down through fibrous veins. It's cooler here, quieter, but you have to stay alert. These root mats sometimes collapse. One bad gust, one big bird landing up top, and the entire ceiling caves in. A few cousins never came back from beneath the mats. Some of them are still part of them, probably. You pass a collapsed tunnel, recent by the look of the soft edges. The mat above is still pulsing with new growth. That's the rule here: when the swamp takes something, it replaces it. Nothing remains broken for long. It just gets reabsorbed. You continue on and something strange happens. You begin to float. Not entirely. Not like a fish. But for the first time, the tunnel becomes wide enough and wet enough that you're no longer pressed to the ground. You move with a sort of buoyancy, drifting like a fallen leaf on a lazy stream. It's unfamiliar. You twitch your tail to correct. You don't like not touching the floor. But maybe this is part of the process. Maybe the older sliders, those big silent shadows that never return your ripples, maybe they do this full time. Maybe this is how you evolve from a glider into a floater, then into something else entirely. Historians still debate whether the adult form of your species retained its sliding lifestyle or transitioned into more aquatic behavior. The fossil record is thin, and adult remains are almost always crushed or warped. One theory holds that the adults used methane bubbles produced internally to increase their buoyancy and rise through deeper chambers like prehistoric blimps. Another theory claims adults became sessile, remaining still in deep sinkholes, filtering food from the passing current like sea sponges. It's not flattering, but it is fascinating. You settle in a low groove surrounded by lichen-covered stones. Here the water is thick with pollen from the overhead mats. Tiny yellow spirals drift past your face, clinging to your snout. You open your mouth slightly, pulling them in. Not for food, just curiosity. You taste the swamp's history. Odd fact of the night: lake sturgeon can live over 150 years, spending most of that time slowly drifting through the silt and feeding on detritus. Some researchers think they can even detect magnetic fields to navigate. Your swamp likely carried similar magnetic patterns caused by iron-rich soils and the constant decay of organic matter. You may have felt the field without even realizing it. As the sun begins to rise, though, you never see it. Only feel the temperature shift. You return to your preferred depth. The swamp above grows louder, buzzing, croaking, flapping. All those creatures fighting over territory you don't even care about. Let them have the sky. You own the tunnels, and the tunnels in turn ride the swamp like a slow carousel of muck and memory. One last glide takes you beneath a mat that smells familiar. Not just in scent, but in shape. You've passed this way before. Days ago, weeks. Time doesn't exist here, only direction, only pressure. You stop, press your body flat, and let the swamp carry you just a little farther. You breathe, but you don't gasp. No huffing lungs. No bellowing rib cage. Your breath is more of a suggestion, something slow, stretched, maybe even borrowed. For a creature that never walks, that never charges or chases, the real puzzle has always been this: how did you breathe down there? The tunnel is muggy. You lie in a sump, the deepest part of a buried corridor where moisture pools and time seems to thicken. You've been here a while, not asleep but not quite awake either. Your body pulses with gentle rhythms, fluid in, fluid out. But the air, the oxygen, that part remains mysterious. And here's the kicker: no fossil yet has given a clean answer. Historians still debate the breathing mechanics of your kind. The bones tell one story, the mud another. Some paleontologists argue you had snorkel-like nostrils high on your skull that allowed you to breathe while submerged just under the surface. Others say that's unlikely, your tunnels didn't always have surface access. So they propose cloacal respiration, breathing through your hindquarters like some modern turtles do during long dives. No, seriously, there are turtles today that breathe through their butts. It's called cloacal bursae. Nature never disappoints. You may have had both systems snorkels when near the surface, backup vents when deep. Or perhaps your metabolism simply adapted to low oxygen environments. There's a strange ridging in your ribs, not just splayed but grooved, could have held vascularized membranes, sort of like proto-lungs along the flanks, like wearing your breathing on the outside. In the absence of certainty, we reconstruct behavior. You settle deeper into the sump. Above you, the swamp roars a distant downpour. Water fills cracks, pours through roots, swells the chamber. Soon your air pocket will vanish, but you don't panic. Your body stiffens slightly. Your breathing slows, almost stops. This is routine. You can hold your breath longer than most creatures that ever lived. 5 minutes. 10. The record doesn't matter, because your goal isn't to win, it's to wait. You breathe between the world's distractions. As the flood reaches your tunnel, you twist gently to create a buffer of water behind your skull. Your snout angles upward just enough for the tip of your nostrils to reach the thinning air layer trapped beneath the root mat. It's humid, heavy, but breathable. And when that air finally runs out, you simply stop. Odd fact of the night, the Weddell seal can consciously slow its heart rate to preserve oxygen when diving under Antarctic ice. Down to 2 beats per minute. Your body might have done something similar, heartbeats spaced like dripping water. Time stretches. Motion halts. But you remain alive, waiting for the swamp to exhale again. Meanwhile, something else breathes for you. The moss on your back has bloomed. Yes, moss. You've carried it for weeks without knowing. Spores settled on your scales during a surface glide, and now they drink the swamp air around you. As they photosynthesize, they release trace oxygen, just enough for your skin to sip. A symbiosis so subtle no one would believe it unless they saw it under a microscope. Even then, they'd squint. Historians still debate if this was intentional. Did your kind cultivate these symbiotic patches, or did they just benefit from them by accident? No grooming behavior has been observed in fossils, no claws adapted for scraping. So perhaps the moss stayed because you let it. A walking, or rather sliding ecosystem. A garden in motion. You stir once the rain slows. The water level drops slowly. The air returns. Your nostrils flare gently first, breath in minutes. You feel your ribs flex. The tunnel cools. The worst has passed. But the breathing puzzle remains. Even today, no single explanation satisfies everyone. Snorkels, cloacas, lung flanks, moss farms, or something else entirely. Maybe you didn't breathe like anything we've seen before. Maybe your survival relied not on organs but on patience. Because while other dinosaurs thundered, chased, squawked, gasped, you learned to simply stop, to fold inward, to become a ripple in mud. Here's one last thought: modern lungfish can bury themselves during drought, encase their bodies in mucus cocoons, and wait for years, not days. Years. No food, no water, no air, just stillness. When it finally rains again, they emerge unchanged. Perhaps your kind too knew how to disappear without dying. Perhaps you're still down there, somewhere, holding your breath. You never practiced. You never rehearsed. But when the time came, you knew exactly what to do. It begins with a ripple, not yours but theirs. You feel it before you see anything. A pattern in the water, not chaotic, not random, deliberate. repeating, pulling outward like the rings from a pebble dropped into a perfect still pond. It's mating season and your world doesn't light up with color or sound. It pulses. The courtship of your kind isn't about displays. There's no feather fluffing, no screeching, just water, rhythm, vibration. You join the ritual by mirroring the pattern, a tail flick, a slight twist. Another ripple joins theirs. Your signals meet like strangers locking eyes across a crowded room. Except, there is no room and no one's looking. You don't glide toward each other. You drift. The way leaves might fall from opposite trees and meet in a stream. Your bodies remain nearly invisible beneath the water's surface. Only the ripples know your name. From above, someone might think it's rain, a breeze, nothing significant. But you know better. Historians still debate how exactly your species courted. Some evidence suggests glandular secretions, maybe pheromones, stirred up into the water. Others point to the expanded tail vertebrae in adults shaped just right for creating precise turbulence. And then there are the fossils found in symmetrical pairs, always spaced just so. Coincidence? Or the final echo of a long-finished dance. You circle slowly, not for dominance, not to impress, but to harmonize. Your ripples gradually match theirs wave for wave until you are no longer two signals but one. Then silence. Stillness. A moment of absolute sync. That's how you know it's time. You align side by side, pressing gently from head to tail. There's no violence, no entanglement, just contact. A slight arch of the body, a pulse. And then you release. So do they. Eggs and seed mix in a swirling column that rises into the water like smoke. And then it's over. No vows, no lingering. You drift apart as easily as you met your bodies returning to solitary tunnels. But for a moment you were more than just a slider. You were a signal. A question answered. Odd fact of the night, certain species of coral can synchronize their spawning with the lunar cycle, releasing millions of eggs and sperm in perfect unison. Not because they see the moon, but because they feel its pull. Perhaps your swamp dwellers did the same. Not in numbers, but in rhythm. Maybe your pulses matched not just a partner, but the planet. You don't stay near the spawning site. That would be dangerous. The fresh mix attracts predators, larger tunnel burrowers, amphibians, even fish with jaws strong enough to bite through silt. You disappear before your own eggs settle. And where do they land? Tiny globes drifting down through muck and filament, each one coated in a mucus so sticky it grabs onto anything. Roots, rocks, even old bones. They don't need nests, they need anchors. Something to hold them in place while the world sways above. Some won't make it. A sudden flood will flush a few away. Fungi might eat others. But some will harden. Some will pulse. And one day, one will crack open in the darkness and slide away belly first toward a life it doesn't yet understand. Historians still debate whether sliders were seasonal breeders or opportunistic. The fossil layers don't show obvious nesting grounds like other dinosaurs. But that might be the point. You didn't need nesting grounds. The swamp was your cradle, your incubator, your babysitter and bodyguard. All you had to do was drop and drift. And the ripple dance, it was everything. A signal in water, a pattern no predator could hear. Even if they did, they wouldn't understand. They'd only feel the disturbance, and then it would be gone. You continue on, tired but calm. There's no celebration, no fanfare, just mud and stillness and the knowledge that you've done what you were born to do. It's night again, at least above. You sense the drop in temperature the way the swamp exhales cooler breath through cracked rootways. You pause at a surface pool nostrils just beneath the water and release one last ripple. Not to attract, not to warn, just to say I'm still here. The swamp breathes different at night. You don't know why, it just does. The water cools, the roots stiffen, and the silence becomes sharper, like a blade that hums before it cuts. This is your hour. This is when you rule. You ease forward through a tunnel half-flooded your belly, gliding effortlessly over sediment that smells like old thunder. Above you, the sounds begin the chorus of nocturnals. Frogs, insects, something large with too many teeth trilling for attention. But they all stay in their lanes because the night doesn't belong to them. It belongs to you. By day you hide, you listen, you slide in avoidance. But by night you move with intent. The predators that hunt by sight are blind now. The scavengers that pick through sunlight are asleep. And you're as invisible as ever. But tonight, it's an advantage, not just a defense. You break into a shallow runnel thick with insect life. Larvae, grubs, and soft-bodied things crawl through filament strands and old leaf skin. You strike once, twice. Your jaws slice sideways with the clean snap of a coin purse snapping shut. Each movement sends vibrations through the tunnel, but the echoes die fast, muffled by the velvet mud that has always kept your secrets. Historians still debate your activity cycle. Some argue sliders were crepuscular, most active during dawn and dusk. But recent analysis of bone growth rings, yes, dinosaurs had those too, suggest a metabolic pattern that fluctuated with temperature. Translation: you were most alive when the world was least visible. The deeper the dark, the bolder the glide. Odd fact of the night, there are cave-dwelling salamanders in Eastern Europe that haven't moved from their rock in 7 years. Seriously, not a joke. Just sat there. Because their world provides everything they need, food drifts by oxygen is steady and predators can't reach them. But you're not that patient. You use the night. You pass an opening to the surface. Moonlight pours through it like milk, lighting the tunnel in ghost-pale streaks. You don't rise. Instead, you pause, letting your body blur into the shadows. Something above rustles a feathered thing, maybe with hollow bones and shallow dreams. It looks, it waits, but it doesn't see you. Because you are the absence of shape. And then you move again. The coolness of the air helps you slide faster. The film of condensation on your scales becomes lubrication. You're not just avoiding predators, now you're running circuits. Feeding, mapping, visiting old chambers that echo with familiarity. Your tail flicks just once near the moss column you helped cultivate. It pulses back. It's still alive. You are too. Down a slope tunnel you find a place where eggs were laid weeks ago. The chamber smells like algae and rust fresh. You drift closer. No hatchlings yet, but the globes are firm. Stable. You don't touch them. That's not your job anymore. Your work is done. Still, you stay for a moment. Just to listen. Historians still debate the degree of parental care your species offered. Most evidence points to abandonment, lay the eggs and leave. But a few rare fossils suggest adults may have lingered nearby for a time using body heat to regulate temperature or clearing tunnels of debris. The question remains open. But in this moment, your stillness feels like vigilance. Odd ripples cross your flanks. A water snake brushes past smaller than you, harmless. It doesn't even register you as predator or prey. You are just part of the tunnel, furniture, history. That's how you win, because everything else in this swamp is trying to be loud, bright, heard. But you are the swamp's pause, the moment in between. And when night falls, that's all anyone listens to. As the hours pass, your body begins to slow. Not from exhaustion, but from completion. The loops are finished. The circuit is done. The prey has been fed upon the tunnels. Check the eggs visited. The moss confirmed. You've done your work. You find your way back to a chamber known only to your ribs. A curve in the tunnel that fits your spine like it was carved just for you. Maybe it was. You ease into it, pressing down slightly to form a shallow groove. Water pools gently around your tail. You exhale once, slowly. Above the swamp is still. And for a moment, even the moon forgets to rise. There's no body to mourn. Not really. When a slider dies, the swamp doesn't return it, it absorbs it. One moment, there's the pulse of a gliding mass curling around root columns and pushing silence forward. The next, there's only stillness, a slow sag in the tunnel, a pocket of warmth where something used to move. No bones, no feathers, no final scream, just a soft sigh into sediment. You witness one now, though witness might be too generous. You feel it more than see it, a ripple that starts and doesn't return. A curve in the pressure map that goes unanswered. Another slider, gone. You didn't know them. Doesn't matter. You feel the absence like a shift in the tunnel's mood. You slide closer. There's no carcass, no evidence. Just a ring of disturbed silt and the faint trace of warmth where body used to be. Already scavengers move in micro-larvae moss tendrils, colonies of things without names. They don't feed exactly. They welcome the transformation. In a few hours, even the memory will be restructured into living fabric. One more echo sewn into the swamp. Historians still debate the reason for this near-total vanishing. Some suggest body composition played a role, soft-boned, cartilage-heavy frames prone to collapse and rapid decay. Others argue that the tunnel ecosystem itself was designed to reclaim matter too quickly for fossilization. And then there's the extreme idea that sliders possessed some chemical trait that actively dissolved their bodies post-mortem. A kind of built-in vanishing act. Convenient, frustrating, odd fact of the night hagfish. When attacked, release mucus that expands on contact with water so thick it chokes predators and clogs gills. The slime is made of microscopic fibers stronger than nylon. What if your kind had something similar? A final defensive burst not to survive, but to erase. The ecosystem doesn't weep, but it shifts. The chamber cools. The moss near the remains curls inward. The tunnel sags, becoming less traveled. You glide through it once more, perhaps the last to do so, and press gently along the sides as if to say, I noticed. Then you move on. Because here, death isn't an eruption. It's assimilation. No one grieves a slider's passing because nothing truly leaves. It changes form. It thickens the walls. It feeds the next algae bloom. It fertilizes the spores that stick to your flanks and bloom beneath root light. That's the deal. Still, something about this passing lingers. You reach a junction and hesitate. Normally you'd turn right, but tonight you turn left into a corridor less familiar. Maybe it's instinct. Maybe it's avoidance. The tunnel is narrower, less stable, and smells faintly of fermentation. But you don't mind. You welcome the distraction. A sudden shift ahead, a wall of silt collapses inward. You brace, coiling tight. Nothing follows. It was old air finally breaking loose. A breath held too long. You uncoil and proceed, your sides brushing against newly bared roots. One twitches. A burrow worm startled. You flick your tail and let it scurry off. Somewhere behind you, the ripple of the lost slider fades completely. The swamp no longer reacts. The silence returns. Here's a modern comparison. There are jellyfish species that don't die. Instead, when damaged or aged, they revert to earlier stages of life, becoming juveniles again, biologically immortal in a way. Your kind didn't go backward. You didn't restart. You simply disappeared. That might be more impressive. You enter a sensory chamber low-ceilinged with filaments dangling like underwater cobwebs. You press into them as you pass, recording the pattern. They tell you no one else has been here. Not today, maybe not in weeks. That makes this place yours, for now. You curl gently in the center, the way you always do, letting your body sink slightly into the softened mud. Around you, the tunnel exhales slowly. The roots creak in low tones like cello strings played underwater. Above, nothing moves, not the birds, not the breeze. It is the purest moment of swamp stillness, and you carry it like an inheritance. Somewhere another slider dies. You don't know them either, but the pressure changes slightly. You feel it in your belly scales, that soft ripple of subtraction. And for the first time, you wonder when it's your turn, will the tunnel remember you? Will the roots adjust? Will the moss curl inward? Or will you vanish so perfectly, so quietly, that even the mud forgets? Maybe that's the point. Not to be missed, but to become something unmissable. You wake to thirst. Not for water, you're surrounded by that, but for depth, for coolness. For the solid embrace of a tunnel that doesn't squelch with every movement. Something has changed. The swamp is different, shallower, louder. You hear the buzz of flies where you once heard frogs. You smell dust where there should be moss. The marsh is turning against you. You glide forward, but the resistance feels wrong. The water is thicker, warmer, almost syrupy. Your belly no longer slips across the tunnel floor, it drags. You flick your tail and feel it catch on exposed root clusters. Air seeps through cracks that used to be submerged. The ceiling above is lower, drier. And the algae mats, gone, withered to crusts. A dry spell. A big one. Maybe bigger than your lifetime. Historians still debate whether this shift was seasonal, cyclical, or catastrophic. Some sediment layers suggest massive drought swept through these lowlands in waves 5, 10, even 20 years long. Others argue a slow climate transition sealed the swamp's fate, drying it from the edges inward. But whatever the cause for creatures who lived by sliding, it was a death sentence. You push forward into a chamber once lush with pond slush. Now it's cracked mud and brittle weeds. You try to turn, but your ribs catch on hardened debris. You twist awkwardly and backtrack. The tunnel groans. Part of the wall collapses in a puff of dry powder. Even the moss recoils, it doesn't like this air either. Here's your odd fact for the night. Lungfish, when trapped in drying mud, secrete a mucus cocoon around themselves and enter a state of estivation, like hibernation, but in heat. They wait out the drought sometimes for years. You have no cocoon, no burrowing instinct. Your skeleton was designed to slide, not dig. You find a pool, or what's left of one. Shallow, foul-smelling. Dead insects drift on its surface like fallen stars. You slide in and settle belly first, trying to sink. But there's no depth left. The water hugs your sides without lifting you. You try to inhale, but the air burns slightly. Your nostrils sting with dryness. You move again, desperate now. Not panicked, but wrong-footed, if that were a thing sliders felt. Every chamber that once welcomed your weight now rejects it. The once glistening algae blooms have shriveled into translucent film. The tunnel floors are cracked like aging skin. You pass over a skeletal cousin exposed, half crushed by the ceiling. The swamp didn't even bury this one. You pause, press your side to the dust. You listen. Nothing. Historians still debate how sliders responded to the changing swamp. Some believe they migrated, sliding through vanishing waterways in search of deeper fens, but that's doubtful. You weren't built to roam. You were built to remain. Others think you adapted, growing more aquatic, maybe even evolving gills in later branches. But no fossil proves that. The likeliest truth is simpler. Sadder, you waited too long. You catch a scent, real water. A trickle of cold against your flanks. You follow it, scraping along tunnel walls now dry and rough. The scent grows stronger. You find a hairline gap in the floor, water rising from below. Not a stream, a seepage. You angle your snout downward and drink, jaw barely moving. It tastes like stone and rot. It's glorious. Then the ground shakes just slightly. A root gives way. The chamber above collapses with a thud like a closing book. A shaft of dry air blasts into your face. You blink, eyes finally irritated by the harshness. For the first time, your hiding place is exposed. You retreat into shadow, breathing slowly. The collapse sealed off part of the tunnel system. You may never pass that way again. And still, you do not leave. You do not flee, because you can't. You were born into this tunnel raised on its rhythm. The swamp may be shrinking, but you are bound to its shape. Your limbs won't carry you across dry land. Your belly can't support you without the water's lift. If the swamp dies, so do you. But not yet. You slip into the deepest pit you can find, what used to be a feeding chamber. It's now barely more than a hollow gash in the dirt. You press yourself into it, forming a seal. You exhale once. The dust settles. The tunnel quiets. You wait. Maybe the rain returns tomorrow. Maybe it doesn't. The swamp doesn't explain itself, and neither do you. Rain never came. Not that night, not the next. You stopped counting after the tunnel's last wet echo dried into silence. The swamp's breath, once heavy and constant, is now a series of shivers. Its roots crackle underfoot. Its water retreats like it knows what's coming. You stay still for days, weeks, maybe sunk belly deep into dust that used to be silt, hoping for the old rhythm to return. It doesn't, and yet something does. A sound. Faint. Metallic almost. You can't name it. It doesn't belong in the swamp. It's even too dry. A scrape. Then another. Pressure, but not from below. Not from something that slides. From above. From something that walks. You feel it long before you see it. The first shovel strikes. Historians still debate what actually tipped off the dig team. Some say it was a strange soil formation spotted from the air, spiral-shaped drainage patterns that made no sense. Others point to the hiker who fell into a hole lined with fossilized moss and panicked, thinking it was quicksand. Either way, someone started digging, and when they did, they found you. Not alive, of course not, but something close. The fossil was so pristine it barely seemed real. Entire sections of skin preserved as impressions. Rib cage perfectly flattened, as if you had laid down and waited for time itself to harden around you. No skeleton had ever looked so soft, even stranger. You weren't alone. Dozens of impressions surrounded you, most partial, some mere hints of motion pressed into mudstone. Like a traffic jam of ancient silence captured mid-slide. It confused them. Dinosaurs didn't live like this. Dinosaurs walked. They roared. You didn't. You whispered, you slipped, you vanished. The fossil team was stunned. One scientist reportedly muttered, "It looks like it just lay down and disappeared." Which, to be fair, is exactly what you did. Here's your odd fact for tonight. The Lager Velo child, a Paleolithic fossil discovered in Portugal, confused anthropologists for decades. The skeleton had features of both modern humans and Neanderthals. It didn't fit in any box. You are that kind of puzzle, too flat, too quiet, too much. The dig revealed your tunnels, too. Not in full, but enough. A honeycomb of corridors pressed through ancient soil wrapped around root fossils like coiled string. They found chambers, vents. One even had what appeared to be a feeding trough filled with bones of frogs and insects. But the real mystery, a circle of polished stones deliberately placed, too symmetrical to be natural. Historians still debate their purpose. Was it a nesting site? A shrine? A gravity trap for prey? No one agrees. But one paleontologist, half-joking, called it a swamp hearth. And somehow that stuck. They named you Sabulonectes ventri, belly swimmer of the sand. You got a museum display. A special documentary. A digital model that kids now spin with their fingers in classrooms, giggling at your funny shape and stubby limbs. You became a curiosity. A dinosaur that never walked. But what they can't model, what they'll never recreate, is the quiet. They don't understand how still the tunnels were, how the mud listened, how your kind shaped a city not by force but by friction, how death meant dissolution, not display. They admire your fossil, but they don't know how long you waited for that tunnel to refill. How long you lay curled in a groove you carved with your own ribs, hoping the swamp would return. It never did. And yet, part of you remained. In that final chamber, just beneath your skull, they found something odd, a ring of moss spores fossilized in place. Not root, moss. In an environment too dry to sustain it. The lab couldn't explain it. The sample shouldn't have preserved. But there it was, a whisper of green in stone. Maybe the swamp remembered you after all. Maybe it wasn't a grave. Maybe it was home. You are gone. Not in the dramatic way, no bones snapped mid-stride, no predator's fang embedded in your skull, just faded. A quiet subtraction. A line erased from the map no one ever drew. You curled into your tunnel, your belly molded perfectly to its floor, and let the last breath slip through your skin like steam through moss. No ripples, no final slide. The swamp didn't roar. It exhaled, and then it folded over you. The tunnel collapsed days later, maybe weeks, softly, like a blanket settling. Roots grew through your ribs. Muck filled the space where your lungs used to ripple. You didn't fossilize right away. The conditions weren't perfect, but they were good enough. Slow sediment, low oxygen, just enough pressure, not too fast, just right, the way you always moved. The rain never returned, not for you. The swamp shifted, retreated, cracked. Tunnels dried. Moss died. The creatures that relied on the wet forgot your roots. Frogs moved elsewhere. Insects bred in puddles, not chambers. Even the floating root mats stopped drifting. They grounded. They gave up. Historians still debate what your final days looked like. Some believe sliders disappeared in waves isolated by rising heat and falling water. Others argue you collapsed as one, an entire network of silent creatures waiting for a rain that never came. Either way, it ended here. In this tunnel, this moment. Odd fact of the night, some orchids only bloom once every 10 years, and when they do it for one night. That's it. One display, then silence. Your entire species may have been like that. A hidden bloom, a one-time marvel, a miracle no one saw in full. And then one day, someone did. A shovel, a gasp, a carefully brushed away layer of dust. The curve of your rib, the flattened print of your tail. They didn't expect you. They were looking for something with legs. You gave them a question instead. They'll build models. They'll write papers. They'll debate your diet, your breath, your rituals. But they'll never know what it felt like, the slide, the pressure, the weightless drift in a chamber of still water. They'll never feel the moment when two ripples crossed in the dark and became one. They'll never see the swamp the way you did, but they'll try. And that's something. You remain not in flesh, not even in bone, but in shape. In the tunnels, in the grooves, in the stubborn moss that clung to your ribs and fossilized the memory of breath. They put you under glass now, perfectly lit, incorrectly labeled. Swamp-dwelling, non-walking theropod. A mouthful of misunderstanding. But someone will walk past that display. A kid, quiet, curious, and they'll pause. They'll see your shape, your curve, your flattened spine, and they'll wonder. And that's how you slide forward, one ripple at a time. The swamp has dried. The tunnels have collapsed. The sliders are gone, no song, no monument, no visible trace in the shifting marsh, but not forgotten. Because buried beneath layers of sediment, beneath questions and guesses and fragments of bone, your story still stirs. You were not loud, not large, not a conqueror. You did not roar, leap, fight, or tower. You didn't need to. You slid. You shaped the world not by walking over it, but by passing through it. Your tunnels were not territory. They were memory. And even now that memory echoes. It echoes in the soft hush of the museum's glass case, in the pale light that strikes the fossil's grooves, in the unsteady voice of the paleontologist who says, "We still don't know why they live this way." Because mystery is your legacy, not a riddle to be solved, a presence to be felt. In the end, you didn't vanish. You became the silence between other stories. You became the shape of movement itself. And somewhere out there in a quieter moment in a smaller life, someone will remember the dinosaur that never walked and wonder if maybe, just maybe, stillness can be survival.